So it's funny, right? The top three leaders in the race are people who are from groups that are marginalized, that support racist policies. Eric Adams is a black dude, Andrew Yang is an Asian dude, and Catherine Garcia is a woman. So they're people that are of marginalized group yet support racist policies. That's what New York liberalism is. They support people that are marginalized, identity politics, while supporting racist destructive policies. That's the liberalism of New York.
Keep it 100, I be feeling like Campbell soup over white rice, baked chicken with the skin on, yeah, Lowry's with black pepper, I'm fully seasoned with laughter.
New York City's mayoral Democratic primary is on Tuesday, June 22nd. And even though this is the primaries, whoever wins this is guaranteed to become the next mayor of New York City because the Republicans never win a citywide race. Upstate New York is very different because they are very red, upstate New York, but the city is blue. They vote Democratic. But don't get it twisted. That doesn't mean that because New York City votes Democratic, it votes heavily Democratic, does not mean that it's left. Here in New York City, we have something called ranked choice voting. And this is going to be a first year ever that we had ranked choice voting. The way it works is the voting system has rounds. You get to choose your first, second, and third place candidate. Your first place candidate gets your first vote. The second place candidate gets the second vote. The third place candidate gets the third vote. And it's the same with everyone else. If any candidate reaches 50% plus one vote of the first place votes, it's over and the candidate wins. If it doesn't, it goes to a runoff. What that means is if your first candidate does not reach a certain percentage of the first place votes, they'll be eliminated and your second place candidate will now get that vote. And this process repeats and repeats until a candidate finally has 50% plus one vote and they would become the winner of the election. The reason why the ranked choice voting system is ideal because you don't have to worry about a spoiler vote, meaning you can vote for whoever you want without worrying about taking away votes from a candidate you feel that's most likely to win and making it less likely for the candidate that you perceive as the worst to likely win the election. So what I'm going to do is tell you who's most likely to win based on the polls, who I'm voting for and why, and I'm going to tell you who the worst candidate is, who unfortunately is the candidate that's most likely to win, and I explain why he's so terrible as well. So my candidates ranked are as follows: Diane Morales 1, Maya Wiley 2, and that's it. So I thought putting Scott Stringer as my third choice, but I couldn't. I actually have a little bit of a history with Scott Stringer. I worked in politics a bit in New York City, and I was a part of a few Democratic groups and committees that before Donald Trump actually won the election, no one ever showed up for. So on a good day, we'd have about 4 people to show up to the race, and that's on a really good day. Normally it would be just people who were contributing members of the group that showed up, and maybe 1 or 2 other people, but on a great day we have 4 people. It was a party in there. But the day after Donald Trump won, or maybe a few days when we held the first meeting, everyone and their mama showed up. It was packed, right? So before Donald Trump won the election, we have been advertising, paying for advertising, trying to get people out to come to these meetings, but they never came. But the second Donald Trump won, he was the ultimate free advertiser and everyone showed up. So that's not something that should be happening. People need to be participating in a democracy in order for things to change. But that was not happening until Donald Trump became the president of the United States. So in this particular meeting, Scott Stringer was there, And I can't remember my exact question, but I pointed out the Yale study of money and politics and how it corrupts politicians. And I asked him about something that he supported, and does it have anything to do with the money that he's taken, and did it corrupt him? So the room actually applauded my question, and he of course gave a very terrible answer that made no damn sense whatsoever, and he got booed for his answer, which was pretty funny. So after that, there was a second meeting where Scott Stringer showed up again, and at the end he did a Q&A just like in the last meeting, and he called on me. I guess he didn't remember me from the first time. So in this meeting, I asked him, he told a lie about how if there's a constitutional amendment that the Republicans would completely control all of government, so we have to avoid that at all costs. So what I did is I explained to him why that's not true whatsoever, and I called him on his lie about that and asked him to explain why he was lying. And he of course looked very bad and gave another explanation that made no sense. And then there was a third meeting where it was the second meeting was an intimate setting. It was a round table. So he got embarrassed twice. And then the third time, it was a rather large auditorium, and he did the Q&A session at the end. And a few people asked questions, but not many people raised their hand. And this time I was actually sitting in the front of the auditorium, so, I raised my hand. And at the time when I raised my hand, about 5-6 other people asked questions, and no one else asked questions. So I had my hand up, and he refused to call me. He just ended the meeting real quick. Thank you, have a good day, and got out of there. He did not want to answer my question again. So he probably would have called on me if I sat somewhere in the back, because he wouldn't have seen me. But I sat in the front. That was a mistake of mine. So that's my bit of a history with Scott Stringer. So I assume he remembered me that time, and he just did not call me. So that's part of the reason I couldn't put him on my ballot. So it really speaks to Scott Stringer being the third most left candidate in the race. Really speaks to just how terrible the state of our politics are. So my first choice, Dianne Morales, she's my top choice because, first off, as some of you already know, the homelessness crisis is a very important issue for me. Look, we need to end homelessness. We are the richest country in the history of the world, and we have people who don't have a home. That makes no sense whatsoever. And I'm not sure if many of you know, but New York City has the second largest homeless population in the country to California, the two most left liberal states, right? So that tells you just how left and liberal these states are. This homelessness crisis that we face in New York City, I'm going to speak specifically for New York City because I live in New York City. I've lived in New York City the vast majority of my life. So I'm going to speak to New York City. I would say this homelessness crisis that we have in New York City is a moral failing on not just the politicians, but also the people. And the reason why I say the people is because many New Yorkers look down on homeless people like they're garbage, like they're trash. And that's complete foolishness. They're homeless people. They're people without homes. Many people who are homeless, they became homeless for circumstances that were beyond their control. Yet many New Yorkers treat these people as they're not people. And the thing is, anyone can be homeless. You can be rich and become homeless. That happened to a lot of people in 2008 when the stock market crashed and people lost all of their wealth overnight. A lot of those people became homeless. Some of those people never recovered. So you could be rich and be homeless. You can be poor and become homeless. That can happen to literally anyone. And I'll tell you a bit of my story. So when I was 21, I had $27,000 saved up in my bank account. Just in my savings. I always had money in my checking, but in my savings, I had $27,000 saved up that I had no plans on touching. And then in 2016, I got extremely sick because I had an autoimmune disease that randomly came about, randomly attacked me. And I became so sick that I couldn't work for damn near 2 years. And all my money that I had saved up got wiped out because of medical bills and other bills. So I didn't have to, I was somewhat lucky when it came to college because I had an athletic and academic scholarship. It was mostly academic. So I didn't really have to pay anything out of pocket when I went to school because of my academic and athletic scholarship. So I was blessed in that way where I didn't have to take out any student loans. No, I took out small student loans, very small student loans. But compared to some of my friends that had tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, I didn't really have that because of my academic and then athletic scholarship. I think about 75% of my scholarship was academic, then like about 20% maybe was athletic. Then I think I took out a few thousand in student loan, but a low amount. So I was blessed when it came to that. So I didn't really have to pay back I didn't really have to pay back very many loans, right? So what happened to me is my autoimmune disease happened and I got very sick. And within a year, I went from having $27,000 in saving to going completely broke and being in debt because of a situation that was beyond my control. Now, I didn't become homeless because I had people that looked out for me and cared for me and I had family. But that could have happened to me as well if I didn't have those support systems. And that can literally happen to anyone. So just imagine you did everything right. America's supposed to be as meritocracy. And you're working your behind off as much as anyone. I work 16-hour days. 16 hours a day. Sometimes 20 hours. Honestly, to be completely honest, a 14 to 16-hour day was a 14-hour day was a short day. A 16-hour day was about average. But sometimes I worked over 20 hours a day. Barely got any sleep. I would literally sometimes get 4 hours of sleep. That's how much I was working. I would say I often got only 4 hours of sleep. That's how much I worked. So I was working as hard as anyone was working. And then all of my savings that I had at 21 got completely wiped out. And I went into debt because of medical bills. And because I couldn't work because I had an autoimmune disease. That can happen to literally anyone. And we look down on homeless people because they're homeless. When many of those people, they face circumstances beyond their control that led to them being homeless. That could have been me. Now, I'm not one of those who something has to happen to me for me to care, because I cared about this issue well before what happened to me. But that's just an example of how you one day can become homeless. And I know many New Yorkers don't really care about homeless people, because right now I live in a rather upscale neighborhood. Growing up in hood, right now I live in an upscale neighborhood. And they were planning on building a homeless shelter in this neighborhood. There's a bunch of signs going up about how, they're trying to build a homeless shelter in our community. We need to stop that. We need to band together to stop that. Homeless people is this and that. I took a picture of it. If I could find it, I'll include it in the video, but I don't know if I can find it. But people were really acting disgusting towards homeless people in this community. And it's not just this community, it happens all throughout the city. Whether you're in the hood or you're in the upscale neighborhood, they treat the homeless like they're garbage, right? So that's why I say it's a moral failing both on the politicians and the people. I'm not going to excuse the people. So her platform includes housing for all in New York City, which like I said, I really support. Something else in her platform, it's similar. It's a Green New Deal style policy that creates jobs, that addresses the climate crisis, and also growing food in a sustainable way that also addresses the climate crisis, which I also support. Something else that I support a whole lot, she wants to expand universal pre-K. She wants to increase education, funding for education. And something that's also very important that's often overlooked, she wants to reduce the class sizes from over 30 to 1, 30 students to 1 teacher, down to 18 to 1. So that's important for mainly 2 reasons. So 1 teachers have to teach so many students, 1 teacher per 30 students. That's very overwhelming to them. They have a hard time dealing with all those students. And I know, because I'm not a teacher, but I've worked in classrooms dealing with many students. I worked in after school programs dealing with many students, and it's difficult to deal with a large amount of students. So she wants to reduce that size from 30 to 1 to almost half, down to 18 to 1. So the second reason is also good, is because it makes it much better. It's a better learning environment for the kids. The teachers get to spend more one-on-one time with these students to help them learn things that they wouldn't be able to give the time to them otherwise. So that's important for those reasons. She also supports cutting police budgets in order to reallocate those resources to social services that are in need, like mental health. So that's also a very great policy that I also support. And there was a study, people that's against it. There's been studies done that police doesn't actually reduce crime. And if you think about it logically, police don't prevent crime. Police come there after the fact. So how are they preventing crime? The way crime is prevented, and there's plenty of studies to back this up. I'll link some in the description as well. The way you prevent crime is by reducing poverty. So that's, if we want to prevent crime, we work on reducing poverty, and that's what Dana Morales's policy platform reflects, and that's something that I support. But unfortunately, Dana Morales has 0 chance of winning, and that's mainly for 2 reasons. So at the start of the race, I began looking up the candidates, and it was absolutely overwhelming because there was 6,591 candidates, and it was a hard time to really look at all of the candidates. So I went through a list. I went through several lists, and reading through a candidates, the platform, found out to see if I would be interested in those candidates. Not the vast majority of them were terrible, so I just wasn't interested in them. But the thing that I realized is that Dana Morales was not on that list in that article. And it's crazy because she announced her candidacy back in Sorry for the alarms, I can't do anything about that. She announced her candidacy back in 2019, yet she wasn't on some list in the 2021 election. So that was done purposely. That's what that tells me. So the reason why she wasn't on the ballot is because she's the most left candidate, and corporate media does not like leftists. And I'll tell you why. The corporate media is inherently right-wing. Whether you support CNN, MSNBC, ABC, Fox News, they're all right-wing. All of them. And the reason that is because in 1996, Bill Clinton, he signed the Telecommunication Act, which allowed all of the media conglomerates to be owned by just 6 companies. So the same companies that own Fox News also own CNN, also own MSNBC. So all of those news organizations are right wing. The CNN, the MSNBC, and things like that, that's nominally left, they may be left socially sometimes, but on economics, they're extremely right wing. And you cannot properly address inequalities in the system while being on the right economically, while ignoring the economic policies that will actually benefit poor people, whether it's poor black and brown people or poor white people. If you're on the right economically, you're right wing. Your policies benefit that of the right, of the rich, of the wealthy. And they're all owned by the same company. So CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all of those companies, they're right on economics. Fox News is right socially, so they appeal to their conservative demographic, but CNN, MSNBC, and the news organization of that ilk, they pretend that they're left socially, but they're right wing on all economic policies. And they don't properly report on things like climate change because some of these organizations are owned by fossil fuel companies. They take dollars from these fossil fuel companies when they're running ads for them on their station. So they never properly report on climate change. What they would do is they would have an expert in the field of climate change, and they would have an idiot politician debate climate change. Who knows more about climate change? An expert on climate change or a politician that has no clue what he's talking about? But they have them debate and let them decide. That's complete garbage. That's complete foolishness. Make no damn sense whatsoever. What that's called is neutrality in journalism. They let two people present sides, one that may make sense, one that makes no sense, and let the people decide. The media should never do that. What they should do is present facts objectively. Present what the truth. They could let the people debate, but then they fact check and say, hey, you said this, this, and this, but this is wrong. This is the actual truth. So people actually understand what's going on. But that doesn't happen because of the Telecommunications Act of 96. The centralization of corporate media. It used to be all the media organization used to be owned by, at one point, over 50 different conglomerates, and at one point it's over 150, and there were at another point hundreds of different media organizations. But after Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act in 96, it centralized corporate media, and they're owned by just 6 giant corporations. So that's a problem, right? And also, they lied to you because of the fairness doctrine. The fairness doctrine that was repealed. So they're allowed to lie to you, right? So that affects the accuracy in reporting in media. So those two things that absolutely destroy the media, they're terrible. No one should trust them. No one should trust them. Listen, I'm not bought by any corporations, so I have no damn reason to lie to you. These large media personalities, they all lie to you, or they tell you half truths because that's what they're paid to do. They will not hire someone who's going to tell you the truth because it affects their bottom line. So I say all that to say, the media is never going to support a left candidate. And what they would do is they would act like this person doesn't exist, because we all know the saying, any publicity is good publicity. So by giving publicity to left candidate, it makes them more likely to win because their policies are popular. More Republicans support Medicare for all than don't support it. That's how popular Medicare for all is. But the media doesn't platform candidates that supports Medicare for all because it affects their bottom lines. They can't. If they did so, the pharmaceutical companies will no longer give money to these media conglomerates as ad revenue. So that's why media is so terrible today. But I'm getting a bit off topic, so let me get back to topic. On topic. So the second reason she has no chance of winning is because there was a whole issue of her bungling her campaign. It was something about how she had a whole toxic campaign, like the campaign was toxic. It was a toxic work environment. So they didn't really report on her at all and her policies. But of course they reported massively on the issues with her campaign. So that pretty much sank her campaign. Not having a name recognition, and then the issues that came out with her campaign. So she had no chance winning. So my second choice was Maya Wiley. Maya Wiley, she's an AOC endorsed candidate, And her policies are very similar to that of Diane Morales, but I have some reservations with her. The reason why I have a bit of reservation when it comes to Maya Wiley is because during the 2020 election, she spent that entire time smearing and lying about Bernie Sanders while saying she supports Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and Elizabeth Warren. So just how left is she? So Joe Biden, he obviously was the author of the drug war, and he brags about that. And he called black people predators. Hillary Clinton called black people super predators, and she was criticized for that. Joe Biden called black people predators, and not many people criticizing for that. So I'm gonna post a link in the description below so you can actually see that, because people say I'm lying about that, even though I created a video about it. His own words, I'm somehow lying, because something's wrong with people. They like to ignore facts. People on the left nominally claim that Trump supporters are terrible because they ignore facts when they ignore facts. So, yeah. So, those are people she supports. So I just wonder, how left is she? Kamala Harris, she's terrible. She's terrible. Everyone on the left absolutely knows that. Kamala Harris, when she was prosecutor in California, she went after parents for truancy. So if kids did not go to school a certain number of days, their parents would be arrested. And she was proud of that policy. That's like going after the poor. So let me tell you a bit about truancy, right? About that policy. So some people in California is much different than a place like New York. New York, you can walk to school or you can take free public transportation to get to school. But in California, you have to drive almost everywhere. So some parents simply can't afford to send their kids to school sometimes. Or their kids are just cutting school. And she's going to put their kids in prison she's going to put the parents in prison for their kids cutting school. You really think that's okay, Kamala Harris? You really thought that was okay? Really? You know, in junior high school, I cut school in the past. Now imagine my mom went to jail for me deciding to cut school a few times. That's foolishness. Complete foolishness. She was sending me to school. Now most of the time I did go to school, vast majority of the time, but a few times I did cut school. So imagine if my mom went to jail for that. That's what Kamala Harris supported. Meanwhile, wait, another thing I almost forgot. Kamala Harris, while she was running as the, I'm losing the word. Why am I losing this word? It makes no sense. So she was already elected, and she was running again as prosecutor in California. Why can't I think of his words? They'll come back at some point. But she was running again for prosecutor in California. Her Republican opponent wanted to legalize marijuana, while she supported the drug war still. She did not want to legalize marijuana. Her Republican opponent, Ron Gold, wanted to end the drug war. She wanted to keep it going. Why? Because the drug war targets primarily poor black and brown people, and she is in favor of prosecuting poor black and brown people. So she's terrible. Meanwhile, Steve Mnuchin, he went on to work in Donald Trump's White House. He was a former president of One West Bank. They illegally evicted poor people, mostly black and brown people, and Kamala Harris is a black woman, so think because she's black she wouldn't do such a thing. Steve Mnuchin illegally evicted poor black and brown people from their homes in California, and her own office recommended that she prosecute him because they had more than enough evidence to put him in prison. But she decided not to. And why is that? Steve Mnuchin donated to her campaign. And like I said, he went on to work in the Trump White House. So it tells you the type of games they're playing. It's one big club. So, and Elizabeth Warren, no one knows what she actually believes. She claims to be on the left, but she stayed in the race intentionally to make sure that Bernie Sanders doesn't win the election, so Joe Biden can win, because she thought that Joe Biden would give her the vice presidential slot. So she's a careerist. She can't be trusted. She's a fake Native American. She lied about her own heritage. And that's the three people Maya Wiley, and that's the three people Maya Wiley supported. So can we really trust that she's actually on the left? Yes, her platform is great. It's as great as Dana Morales' platform. But look at who she supports. So can we actually trust that she's left? I doubt it. But her platform is great. I'm dehydrated. And almost out of water. I'm filming this the second time because it did not record at all the first time. My throat's kind of dry, so I'm sorry if my voice, I start losing my voice and my voice starts cracking. But that's who Maya Wiley supports. She is an AOC endorsed candidate. I don't know if I said it before, but she is the second best candidate. So it falls off a cliff after that. Like I said, Scott Stringer was the third most left candidate. He's pretty terrible. So now let's talk about the worst candidates. I'm not going to go through all the candidates because, like I said, there's 6,748 candidates that's in this race, so I really cannot go through all of the candidates. So I'm going to talk about the relevant candidates. So Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang, at one point, he was the front runner in the New York City mayoral race. He's absolutely terrible. Very terrible. So even his most popular policy, UBI, Universal Basic Income, he wanted to give $1,000 a month with no strings attached to every New Yorker. Except the only string attached was you had to choose between the current benefits that you're receiving or the $1,000 a month. So that's a very regressive system because many people are receiving more than $1,000 a month from their current social benefits program. So having to choose between $1,000 and the current benefits does not help poor people at all. It's actually quite regressive. So I'm not going to say it helps the rich a lot because what's $12,000 to someone who makes millions of dollars, right? But it's regressive towards poor people. So even his most popular policy is absolutely terrible, a right-wing libertarian plan. So I couldn't in no way support Andrew Yang. And then he later got exposed to be a pro-genocidal maniac. So that was great. He's not going to win. But unfortunately, the front runner in this race is Eric Adams. Eric Adams, he's a Brooklyn borough president, and he doesn't know the average price of a home in Brooklyn. The average price of a home in Brooklyn is $900,000. He thought the average price was $550,000. That looks pretty bad, especially since he's Brooklyn borough president. But that's the least bad thing about Eric Adams. Eric Adams, he's a former Republican and a former cop who is an ardent supporter of Stop and Frisk, which is a very racist policy that targets primarily minorities. The Stop and Frisk, I'm going to speak specifically for New York. Stop and Frisk in New York City targets black people at a rate of 11-1 when compared to white people. So for every one white person stopped by police officers being stopped and frisked, 11 black people were stopped. And this was the case even though at its height, white people were found with something illegal on them, meaning drugs or guns, more often than black people was at a higher rate. So, and that's something that Eric Adams supports and still supports to this day. He still defends that. And he's the front runner in this race. That tells you a lot about New York City liberalism. But here's the thing. Donald Trump, he also was an ardent supporter of Stop and Frisk. He said there needs to be nationwide stop and frisk laws, and he is called racist for that. And I agree that he's racist for that. But New York City is supporting someone that supports the exact same damn policies, and he's not racist as well. You can be black and not like black people. Look at Candace Owens. Look at Jason Whitlock. Fat, sloppy Jason Whitlock. Look at Ben Carson. Most people on the left would say that Jason Whitlock, Candace Owens, and Ben Carson doesn't like black people even though they're black. How's it different with Eric Adams? He's literally a Republican running in the Democratic Party, and he's a favorite. You see how much I told you about liberalism in New York City and liberalism in general? It doesn't matter if you support racist policies or not. It doesn't matter if you're a racist or not. There's plenty of racists in the Democratic Party. As long as you have a D by your name. That's not saying that the Republican Party isn't racist as well, but many Democrats are, but liberals support them because they pretend to support social policies. You can't be someone who is on the left that supports someone who supports racist policies. How are you different than the Republicans? This is a game, man. People are treating this like this is sports teams. Just because, oh, I'm gonna vote for this party because they have a D by their name. I'm gonna vote for this party because they have an R by their name. How about voting for someone who's not trash? But that's not what you do here in New York City. You vote for trash because they have a D by their name. Stupidity, complete foolishness. Eric Adams, he became a Democrat because he realized in New York City, when he wanted to run for a Brooklyn borough president, you can't win as a Republican in New York City. So he became a Democrat for that reason. So now, the polls. The leader of this race is Eric Adams, like I said, at 28%. Second place is Andrew Yang at 20%. Third place is Catherine Garcia at 20%. And Catherine Garcia, she campaigned with Andrew Yang, so I really told you a lot about her. She's also terrible as well. So it's funny, right? The top 3 leaders in the race are people who are from groups that are marginalized, that support racist policies. Eric Adams is a black dude, Andrew Yang is an Asian dude, and Catherine Garcia is a woman. So they're people that are of marginalized group yet support racist policies. That's what New York liberalism is. They support people that are marginalized, identity politics, while supporting racist, destructive policies. That's the liberalism of New York. That's the state of New York City race. And the state of people in New York City. So the top 3 candidates are all right-wingers from a marginalized group that supports racist policies. And they're all the leaders in this race. That's New York City liberalism, like I said. So to wrap up this video, because it's running a bit too long at this point, and my throat is really hurting having to film this video for a second time. So to wrap up this video, all these candidates are trash. That's all I gotta say for this video. If you like the content, like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the post notifications so I post videos in the future. But I gotta leave you with one more thing before the video is over, and that's the word of the day. The word of the day for today is trash. Trash. Trash is spelled T-R-A-S-H. The definition of trash is discarded matter, refuge. So now I will attempt to use trash in a sentence. The top candidates in the New York City mayoral race are all complete and utter trash. Hopefully I use that sentence correctly. So again, if you like the content, like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the post notifications so I post videos in the future, because YouTube will not show you my videos unless you do so. And use trash in the comment section below in a sentence so you watch video to the end, and tell me if you believe these candidates are trash. Anything else? Yes. I have a Patreon account. My Patreon is www.patreon.com/keepit100dre. You can donate anywhere between $3 to $10 a month. It really helps the channel grow massively. I would really appreciate it. It's going to help me bring a better viewing experience to all of you. So if you can't donate anything, I'd appreciate it. If not, I appreciate it as well. Just subscribe to my channel and like the video. It helps it more in the algorithms. Other than that, watch my George Floyd documentary. My George Floyd documentary talks about the system that allowed George Floyd to be murdered. The system that allowed George Floyd to be murdered, if and any progress has been made so far, and just how far we have to go for justice is actually served. So if you like any of my content, and a lot of you have been liking my content, you're going to love that documentary because it's by far my best work. And other than that, I really have to say thank you for thank you all for, especially the last few weeks. My channel has been growing a whole lot. In the past few weeks, it's grown much more in the last 7 to 8 days than it's grown at any point in time. So I really appreciate y'all for that, for showing me love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I appreciate y'all. I truly do from the bottom of my heart. I didn't really think. So far, at least 305, 6 people, as of the recording of this video, want to listen to me just yell and complain all day. But y'all do, so I thank y'all. Yeah, that's it. I appreciate y'all watching my video. Watch the George Floyd documentary. And I gotta go because my throat is hurting. So, I love y'all. 100% this. Peace.
Well, I've been stacking up. Nah, really that ain't accurate, cause I just spent my whole damn advance in the past couple months just to compensate for times we ain't have enough. Ooh.